We live in extraordinary times. And I do believe that you agree with me on that, right? It seems as if all the time we have to unlearn old habits and trends and knowledge in order to learn new ones. And that's actually a good thing on average. However, every now and then, there is something old, something ancient even, that may transcend time, and that will be useful not only for past generations, but also for future ones. And it's such a path that I would like to talk about today. Now, I'm not going to bring this path just in general. I want to bring it within the scope of leadership, because I believe that it's leadership that we need to move from the here and now to the future, right? But responsible leadership, because leaders, as of the last decade or two, have been disappointing us, especially business leaders. Many have landed behind bars. Many have been responsible for the 2008 crisis. Many have been very greed-oriented, very short-term and very profit-based, and not thinking about the long-term, not thinking about the well-being of others, of the larger group. So when I think of leadership, I think of an amalgamation of qualities. I'm thinking about some things that may even seem contradictory, such as empathy and ambition, to name a few. But I also think of things like emotional intelligence, open-mindedness, social responsibility, yes, return on investment too. But everything all together makes for leadership, a responsible blend of soft skills and hard skills. Now, in order to get to that ancient path that I would like to introduce to you, I have to first take you back to the 6th century BC, when a young man by the name of Siddhartha Gautama was born and raised in India. And he was born and raised in affluence. His father was the king of a Shakya tribe, so he had a really good life. But he was very protected and didn't see a lot of the world out there. So he had no clue really what was going on until he made some rides outside of the palace, I will say, where he lived. And he saw a couple of things that really got him to think. One time he saw a sick person. Another time he saw an old person. And the third time he saw a dead person. And that is when he realized that there was more to life than just that affluent lifestyle that he was used to. So at the end of his 20s, he decided to distance himself from everything, and he became a wanderer in search for the truth. It took him another 10 or so more years before he found it. He put himself down under a Bodhi tree, engaged in Vipassana meditation, which is insight meditation, already old at that time, already established at that time, and he came to some really good insights. These insights actually led for him to become known later as the Buddha, or the Enlightened One. Now, when I'm bringing the term Buddhism in here, I'm not talking about religion. I'm not going by a religious mindset. Remember, I'm a business professor, so I am talking about business here. I am looking at it as a psychology for leadership, business leadership specifically. So one of the great insights that this young man had when he sat down and did his meditation and lived his life as a wise person after that were the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths are actually very straightforward. They matter till today. Suffering exists, suffering has a cause, suffering can be ended, and it can be ended through the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, this is the Eightfold Path that I would like to talk about today. That's the ancient path that I was talking about at the beginning. The Eightfold Path is something that we shouldn't see as a step of action. You know, one first, and then the other, and then the third. No. Everything in the Eightfold Path happens at the same time. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness. And what I want to do from here on, I want to briefly elaborate on each aspect of the path, and then I want to bring in my presentation, a leader, a contemporary leader who, in my opinion, has been living it. So, right view. That is when we leave behind the destructive mindsets that we may have, because we have both in us, constructive and destructive mindsets, but we take our constructive mindsets in order to do things for the betterment of all. And I believe that in the last 10 to 12 years, Elon Musk has lived that. Everything Elon Musk has been doing is with the bigger picture in mind. For instance, the Tesla cars. He has not been the inventor of the Tesla cars, of electric cars, but he took them to the next level. And his intention is to make them affordable so that people can stop using the unsustainable fossil fuels. Same idea with the Solar City. Solar City is his company, or the company that he presides, and it is for renewable energy. It cuts costs while it is doing the environmentally responsible thing. Then we have SpaceX. We have 7.4 billion people in the world and counting. And I read somewhere that our maximum capacity may be 10 billion. So we're pretty close. Everybody's concerned about it, but nobody is really doing something about it. He's trying to come up with a plan to start looking for a new address for humanity, if that ever has to happen. And then, of course, the Hyperloop, which you may have heard of, still in concept, but it may be a great alternative to those of us who don't really like airplanes, like me here. You know, 600 to 700 miles per hour over land, it's a great idea. So one thing that he says is when something is important enough, you do it, even if the odds are not in your favor. Now let's go to the next element of the path, right intention. And you will start seeing why I feel that this path may be really good for leaders to take us from here and now to the future. Right intention is when you examine your actions and habits and nurture an awakened mind in order to help others where possible. A term that you will see recurring here is others. It's not all about you, it's about others in this type of leadership. And a person who has lived it is Dr. Muhammad Yunus. I'm not sure how many of you know Muhammad Yunus or have heard of Muhammad Yunus, but he was an economics professor. He studied in America, and in the early 70s, when his home country, Bangladesh, became independent, he moved back, you know, like people usually do when they're patriotic, to help the economy. He became an economics professor there, but every day he would walk outside of the campus and look into the village, and he would see the poor people. And they were working hard. They were micropreneurs, small entrepreneurs, but they weren't getting anywhere. Why? Because they couldn't get loans from banks. Because conventional banks think that poor people are not creditworthy and they don't have collateral. So there. And that means that these people were in the clutches of moneylenders. And the moneylenders were charging them an arm and a leg for everything. So they were never making money. They remained slaves in the hands of the moneylenders. And he started talking to the banks to see what he could do, but nobody wanted to listen to him. So the only thing that was left for him to do is start his own bank. And he started Grameen Bank to grant microloans to poor people in order to help them enhance the quality of their life. And that means he introduced the term social entrepreneur too. Now you need to know that Grameen Bank, the concept of microloans has been replicated over and over since then. So it's a great idea. And to show you that being a social entrepreneur is the thing of today, this man has earned many, many accolades. You can read them all online, but I have a handful here for you. The Congressional Gold Medal, the Nobel Peace Prize. He's the only business person to have a Nobel Peace Prize. That was in 2006, along with Grameen Bank. He also has the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He holds 50 honorary doctorates from universities all over the world. And he was listed by Fortune magazine as one of the greatest entrepreneurs of his era. He says, a social business is not a charity. It's just that profits are not the ultimate goal. Let's look now at right speech. This is when we listen intensely in order to respond correctly, and most of all, speak the truth. Now, a truth teller, I had to look for one. This is one, Bintan Niambi Brown. This lady lives in New York. She's a lawyer. She's also an advocate for women and minorities' rights, and she's a great fundraiser. She used to be one for Hillary Clinton, by the way. Now, in the beginning of her career, she knew what she wanted to be ever since she was 10. But at the beginning of her career, when she finally became a lawyer, she had this huge deal that she had to sign and walk a client through, a $3 billion asset acquisition. But you know what happened? Shortly before the client would sign, she found out some condemning information about the deal. And she was caught in a bind here. Shall I tell the person and risk the entire deal and possibly my entire career, because this is one of my first projects and I'm going to mess it up if I say the truth? Or shall I just keep quiet and let the person sign and then tell them? she decided to do the courageous thing. She told the truth. And believe it or not, the person signed with a few amendments, but he did sign. And that is when she learned that truth-telling is a very important thing, and she became a very big advocate for telling the truths. She says, what if we extended to others the very presumption of innocence we hope would be extended to ourselves? In other words, the golden rule. Treat others like you would like to be treated. Right action. When we engage in right action, we guard our actions, our practices, so that we can help protect the life and the well-being of others. Now, you have to know that if you engage in right action, you have to cease wrong action, right? So no killing, no robbing, no stealing, and definitely no lying too. Well, this man knows all about it. Well, he passed away in 2011, unfortunately, but he has an interesting story that you can see everywhere online. His name is Ray Anderson, and he was the founder and CEO of Interface, one of the world's largest carpet tile factories. So Ray Anderson did what usually the manufacturing CEOs are doing, extracting things to make his carpet tiles. However, in the early 90s, he was bombarded by clients with questions that he couldn't answer. One of the questions was, what's your environmental vision? And he had no environmental vision. So he started reading up on it. And the more he read, the more he became aware that he had been living the life of a plunderer. So he made a pledge, and he worked on it from then on. He made carpet tile production as sustainable, as environmentally responsible as possible. And he didn't stop there. He also became an advocate for environmental sustainability and responsibility. He did everything he could. He used every forum. He wrote books about it. He did TED speeches and everything he could. And he became known as America's greenest CEO. He said, my goodness, this is one of his great speeches. My goodness, the day must come that this is illegal, that plundering is not allowed. I mean, it must come. Someday people like me will end up in jail. Now let's go to right livelihood. This is all about your work. This is when you have to ensure that what you do for a living is constructive and not harmful to others or yourself. Millard Fuller has been living this. Now, you need to know that this man was a self-made millionaire at age 29. He studied law, but he became actually more of a salesman. And he was never home. He was working so hard, sometimes he would sleep in his office. So he had a wife and kids, but they never saw him. And one day, his wife had enough of it. So she said, I want a divorce. And that woke him up, because he realized that all the money in the world would not make him happy if he didn't have his family with him. So Millard Fuller and his wife Linda made a bold move. They gave away all their money. I mean everything. And all that was left was their motorhome, their children, and their bicycles. And they started driving through America in search for a new purpose, which, by the way, they found when they landed in Georgia, and a friend of them introduced them to the idea of building homes for the poor. And that's what they did. In his lifetime, he built more than 300,000 homes for about 1.5 million people all over the world. When he had some trouble internally with Habitat for Humanity, he was ousted by his own organization that he founded. He started the Fuller Center for Housing and kept doing it until he passed away in 2009. And he says, whenever people challenged him about where he would find money to build the houses, he would always just say, well, it's God's money. And God's money is in the pockets of people. I've just got to extract it. And he was successful in doing that. Right effort. This is when we carefully scrutinize our actions, thoughts, and intentions so that they become constructive. Not just to ourselves, but also to others. That's the recurring theme, others. Now, this woman is a lightning example of that, Dr. Vandana Shiva. She is an environmental activist, and she's also one of the big people for the International Forum on Globalization. She campaigns internationally on issues surrounding biotechnology and genetic engineering. In other words, she's fighting those huge predatory global corporations that are trying to monopolize and manipulate our food. And she believes in biodiversity and indigenous knowledge. She says, in nature's economy, the currency is not money, it's life. Right mindfulness. When we're mindful, we see things that we usually take for granted. We become aware of the bigger picture and the need to help correct the things that are wrong in society. And I believe that this man has lived it in the last couple of years, actually for quite some time. Howard Schultz from the Starbucks Corporation. He gave away the day-to-day management of the Starbucks Corporation in 2002, only to take it back in 2008 because the company had become very profit-oriented and he didn't want wild growth. He says, not all my decisions are economic. He raised funds for job creation in the time of the Great Recession, 2008 and after. He's very big on health insurance for part-time employees. That's what Starbucks is known for, right? And he has exemplary disability employment. He says, we are not in the coffee business serving people. We are in the people business serving coffee. Now finally, right concentration. This is when you focus on everything that's important. So you look at right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and of course, right concentration. Because that is when you acquire insights in the relativity that everything is relative and that everything is impermanent, nothing lasts. And that's when you also see that there are some things that are very important that we neglect. The leader that I have chosen as the person doing right concentration is you, because I believe that you are the one that will take us to that bright future. Thank you.